Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Hey, you'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, where we attempt to find the best game within a specific category that we've thought up. For example, this week we're looking for the best game that you thought was one genre but turned out to be another. Genre convergence has been happening for so long in video games that they're starting to feel more and more meaningless as distinctions in a world where everything has RPG elements and RPGs have elements from everything else. You could argue that video games are just video games and that these pigeonholes that we still use are archaic concessions to a bygone era that we in the media just keep around out of habit or obligation despite their waning relevance. Speaking of which, I'm joined today by Editor-in-Chief Tom Orry. We're also joined by Associate Editor Alex Donaldson and Staff Writer Connor, who I think you won last time you were on as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did win. I've been holding that with me for a while now. I'm really proud of that.
And it was your first win, if I remember rightly. So,
yeah, I did pretty shit last time, yeah. I won, so we're good.
Well, we'll see if you can repeat it. I want to first hear from Tom because Tom only just sent me his, like literally before we started recording, and it's interesting. Please name your pick, Tom.
When this topic came in, because I said to Jim, right, Jim, can you sort this out? Because I'm very busy. Just don't mess it up. And then he sent me these topics, and they were like both awful topics. So this one in particular, I was ready to do this whole talk about how no game is ever. I've never felt this about any game because I'm just too smart and too knowledgeable.
Yeah,
and that if you don't know the genre of the game you're playing, you're a clueless idiot. And I thought I won't win with that, even though I would be correct. And then it just came to me. Literally, I was more or less almost clicking the link to join this, and I thought, Bugsnax, right? Bugsnax.
That right. It's a good choice.
It's
right out the gate.
Bugsnax is. It came out around. It was like a PS5 and it launched game, but on other things as well. It's on everything now, pretty much, I think. But it's one of those games that is almost if you looked at it from how it was marketed, like the poster child for the wholesome games feeling among, like, there's the whole group of games that are like, these games are wonderful for everyone. They're fun, colourful, happy, etc. games. And it had the theme tune. We can probably put the theme tune on, Jim, if you're good enough at editing. You could put that little snippet in.
If I'm good enough at editing.
The Bugsnax little jingle bit, which is a really good little jingle song, right?
Yeah, I'll figure out how to drop that in somehow.
If you can, Jim. It was like everyone was quite looking forward to it because it was like all these fun creatures. Oh, look, he's got a burger for a hand. Oh, it's a pizza for a head or whatever. And it's like, oh, hilarious marshmallow rat or whatever running around. And it looked nice. It looked like a nice game with a bit of like sort of almost like survival / Animal Crossing vibes to it. You're on an island. Hunting these little creatures, but then people don't, because it's cute, you don't care about the hunting. It's like Pokemon, right? No one cares that you're trapping all these Pokemon and having fights because it's Pokemon and it's for kids, so no one bothers about that. But it looked like a fun game, right? And it starts off fine. You land on this island and you're looking for this other person, Lisbeth, who went there a while ago and has gone missing, essentially. She's trying to find out what happened to her. And you find out the island is full of these snack creatures, the Bugsnax, and they're all, as you might imagine, really cool-looking mishmashes of foodstuffs, essentially.
Yeah.
And then it progressively gets more and more bizarre and troublesome the more you think about it. Like, one of the main things that happens is that you feed the other island people, I can't remember what they're called. There's a name for all of them, but these islanders, and you feed them the snacks, and their body parts become the snacks, essentially. So you might get one of these characters that has like a curly fry for a leg, or a burger and a hot dog for an arm or something. And it looks kind of cool, but also a bit weird, a bit sort of horror movie, body horror when you look at it, right? But you're kind of like, yeah, it's fine. It's just a game, whatever. It's all fine. But you more you progress through and you get past the initial stages of doing all the missions, whatever, the game takes a real quite huge turn in the latter stages. I don't really want to spoil it because it is really one of the biggest turns I've ever seen in a game my whole life. But essentially, what it was quite a happy, fun game that I thought, oh, my son would like playing this. It's a fun kids game, this one. Suddenly becomes proper full-on horror movie, just chaos at the end. And the end is actually like incredibly sad, depending on how you play the game up to the end. The final moments are like some real dark stuff happens, and it's like, I did not expect this from the game called Bugsnax with the fun Bugsnax tune. It's almost like, when they do those trailers for films, they twist them, they recut them to make like Big into a horror movie or whatever. That kind of Big, Con, if you don't remember, you probably have never seen Big, is Tom Hanks as a child wakes up as a man. These days, that would probably be a bit weird, but back in the 80s that was a thing that happened. In
the 80s it was fine because everyone was just taking massive amounts of cocaine.
But yeah, so this game is essentially like if someone had like this wholesome game and re-edited it half like towards the latter, really towards the very end, and turned it into a horror game. Like it is one of the if you go into, hopefully I haven't spoiled it enough so that it's going to ruin it, but it is just so like, I've never been as surprised by an ending to a game before, and it's a decent game, but it's only really memorable for me because of what happens at the end. I think that is, I was going to pick like a really obvious choice, so hopefully I'm going to ruin someone's day here by picking Brutal Legend, something real obvious. Like, so if anyone picks that, it's like, well, everyone would think of that one. So I discarded that as a rubbish choice. And picked Bugsnax.
Well, you know what? Bugsnax is. I didn't get to the end of it because I don't have any time to do anything ever. But I did get to the point in Bugsnax where it started feeling really sinister, and it became a sort of like, wait a minute, as you say, this is a tale about body horror, and actually, like, if I remember rightly, there's like a real allegory for like prejudice, and it becomes really dark, and it's got really kind of what we would call mature themes, and so it's such a switcheroo and completely almost opposite from how it's marketed, although the marketing does have hints of that stuff.
I think
if you look for them.
I think at the time, no one expected it to be anything but a kind of cutesy little farming survival game.
But
so
I do remember thinking,
looking for it, but it probably is there if you are. It is there,
like definitely the limbs turning into food and stuff is there, but the tone of the trailers is so cutesy that it's like it's designed to obscure. It's really well done, and as you say, probably not that memorable a game were it not for that twist. But that twist is incredible, and the twist is all encompassing as well. It's not necessarily one single event. It's just like, you slowly start to realize that something's, and then the end, you gradually start to realize that this is not the cutesy game it appears, and then the end is a real like head blown, etc. Like this is like, I can't believe this is happening type moment. I wonder
if you don't want to play it,
actually.
It's probably on YouTube, but I think it's probably better if you're going to play it or get an idea of what the game is and then watch the ending, like the final bits, because it is like, but I think it's more impactful if you do play it because of various things that happen to people at the end.
And it got everyone into Caro Caro Bonito for about 10 minutes, which was good for them. All right. Well, I think we have to go to Alex now.
So here's the thing I'd say about Tom's pick. It's an interesting pick and it's a good pick. I suppose it depends on the way you think about genre in video games. Do you think about genre in more of a filmic way and think about it in terms of, because what happens in Bugsnax is the game stays the same, but obviously there is a tonal shift that moves it from a cutesy game into something else while the game stays the same. And I think there's quite a lot of games that do that sort of thing, or even do that sort of thing between sequels, like Shenmue 1 and Shenmue 2 are very almost are like different story genres, even though the gameplay is basically identical. I have approached it in a more gamic way, and I have gone for the obvious example, Tom. So I've gone for Brutal Legend, which for me is the poster child of this entire thing. And the thing I find most interesting about it is this is a genre switch midway through the game that was highly pronounced, and yet throughout much of the game's promotional cycle, EA, the publisher, literally hid what the game actually was. And so a lot of people were genuinely caught completely off guard. Which
I
is
don't know
really
you, but I
interesting in
fucking
itself.
stopped playing it when it turned into an RTS.
Yeah, so if you don't know what it is, so Brutal Legend is a action adventure game that stars Jack Black, and basically it's a world where the very evocative artwork of like metal album covers has been brought to life as a video game world. And the storyline is literally Jack Black's character is a roadie for metal bands and stuff, and he gets sucked into this fantasy world where all the tropes of metal have come to life, and they've got lots of the stars of metal in there. So Lemmy does a voice, Ozzy does a voice, Ronnie James Dio does a voice, and so on and so forth. And it's a really good game. Like, you know, it's a really fun, pretty basic action adventure game at the 360 era with that sort of hack and slashy gameplay, and you're running around and you're fighting these demons that look like the monsters from metal concept covers and all that sort of stuff. And the story I think is really fun and really interesting, and there's a real joy in seeing and hearing a lot of these stars. Rob Halford's in it. Lita Ford's in it, and there's just so much joy in having all these people in it. And also shout out to that game's opening menu, which is a live action FMV with Jack Black talking to the player out of character. And then sort of you literally, when you start the game, you go into an album cover, which is really cool. But yeah, so about halfway through the game, it just ceases to be this hack and slash action adventure game and becomes this weird third-person real-time strategy game where you're still running around on the battlefield as this individual character, but you're also commanding things, and it's sort of like a weird mix of like Command and Conquer meets Pikmin. Like the way Olimar runs around in Pikmin and commands the Pikmin to do things is very, very similar. And I think it's really interesting on a lot of levels. Like Tom is pulling a face and said it's the obvious choice. It's a boring choice. But the thing that I find really interesting about it is, well, one, the RTS element is kind of crap. So the thing that happens is a really brilliant game takes this weird turn into an area that makes it worse. It doesn't make it bad. Brutal Legend is still brilliant. But you know, like you said, Jim, you stopped playing it.
I fully believe
half of the game.
Yeah, I fully believe it takes a good game and turns it into a crap game.
I just absolutely. For me, by the time it hits the problems in that stuff, the story and stuff and the characters have bedded themselves in so well. They're so good that you go, you know what, I'm going to keep going. But the thing that is really interesting on the outside of on how the sausage is made sort of side of things is that this game was stuck in all sorts of legal trouble. So like it was in development with Activision, and then Activision dropped it, canned it, but Double Fine believed they still held the rights, and so carried on working on it, and then EA picked it up. But then when EA picked it up, Activision was like, what the fuck? This is ours, even though we canned it. And then so before the game was out, there was a big lawsuit. So it was that weird thing of they have sort of indicated in the years since that perhaps the back half of the game wasn't as good as it could be because most of the leads, like Tim Schafer, were appearing in court and doing depositions and stuff in order to make sure the game could actually come out. So it's like there's interesting development stuff tied up in that. But yeah, it's such a wild game. And I think in terms of, like I say, there's genre switches where a game shifts genre. And I think in horror games and stuff especially, that's really common. In fact, my favorite example of that, although I think it would be a stretch for this topic, is I think Resident Evil 7 is wonderful because it starts out as this survival horror game where you're terrified and you've got no ammo, and by the end of it, you're running around with a submachine gun and you're like Rambo. And the thing I always loved about that is as a soft reboot of Resident Evil, it sort of actually takes you through the Resident Evil series where you start out in a modern recreation almost of the Spencer Mansion. And at the end, you're this far from punching a boulder, basically, in Resi 6 style. And so there's that, but the game genre remains the same throughout in terms of the way it plays. But then in terms of an example of where a game literally takes a turn and it plays completely differently and it becomes something completely different. And literally what you've learned about the way combat works and stuff has to just get thrown in the trash because it all becomes irrelevant. There is no better example than Brutal Legend. And it's a good game.
Wow. I mean, what a pitch. That's, I mean, yeah, it is the obvious choice, but I mean, Alex has pretty much like made a case for like why it's the obvious choice and why it's therefore a really good one. You know what? Thinking about genres, have you played a game called Space Rangers HD?
I feel like I have.
Kieran Gillen reviewed it ages ago, and it's like this. So it's a space exploration game, but then it's got like text adventures, choose your own adventure, and it's got an RTS element. It's got all this other bollocks thrown in. Just occurred to me.
That's an interesting one. Like I said, I think there's a lot of examples of games that change in a story sense.
Fable.
I mean, I doubt this is what Connor's picked, so I can say it out loud. Like Fable 3, I think, is another good example where halfway through the game you become the king, and the entire tone of the way that story works changes, and it introduces a bunch of new mechanics.
Topical.
Chronicles of Riddick goes from, an adventure game to an FPS, like a stealth adventure puzzle game, and then it turns into an FPS. But I can't think of a better example than Brutal Legend.
Yeah, I don't think there is one really. All right, Connor.
So you both have picked quite intelligent, choices. You both made really good pitches on games. My pick is one that has some history with me. It has a story tied to it. It's Dead or Alive Xtreme 2. For those who don't know, Dead or Alive is a fine game, right? And as many of the people listening out there may know, I kind of like those a lot. And I did when I was younger. And what I would do is I would go to Game or Game Station with a few quid, and I would go to like the bargain side and try and grab some cheap Xbox games, Xbox 360 games. The first Dead or Alive Xtreme game was called Dead or Alive Xtreme Volleyball, whatever. But the second one was just Dead or Alive Xtreme. So I saw that and I was like, sick, some Dead or Alive. I'm going to bring this home and learn some combos and go online and have a great time. And it's sort of like a date. It's not really a dating sim because basically what the game is about is that you and all these deadly fighters from around the world go to an island and slap bikinis on and play volleyball and play in the pool. Right? It's one of those sorts of games. There's no way of like hiding it. But yeah, so I bring it home. I boot it up. My dad likes Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter and stuff, or at least he did when I was living at home. So he sat down on the couch behind me, getting ready to see what it's about, and it boots it up, and it's a bikini volleyball game. It's not just that. To give the game some credit, there is some diversity in the game modes. There's a casino, first of all, which is where I ended up spending a lot of time playing blackjack and roulette, which is quite good. Dead or Alive Xtreme 2 has a sort of jet ski sort of mini game, which is quite cool. I think I'd never played a jet ski game before that, but I mean, it seemed right. The closest thing to a fighting game in Dead or Alive Xtreme 2, which is what I spent a lot of my time doing, is something called Butt Battle. Now, what Butt Battle is you and someone else are on this floating sort of like tiny ring in a pool, and you need to sort of slam each other with your ass until one of them falls off, but you can dodge to the side as well. I don't know if you can parry, but from what I could tell when I was that young, it was just about... It's just... I never thought I'd tell this story on the internet. It's quite wild. Because it was like 13-year-old me trying to like figure out the intricacies of Butt Battle on Dead or Alive Xtreme 2. But
I just have to say, this is all referenced in the Dead or Alive movie as well, in depth, in the sense that there is a shot in the Dead or Alive movie of bikini-clad ladies playing a butt battle on a floating Lido. It's very faithful. It's one of the best video game movies ever made.
it is.
Connor, just to check, like off camera, I mean, people can't see this, but you don't have like a full-size body pillow of Kasumi or anything, right?
No,
just,
I don't. I am
checking.
I am
hey,
body
look at Tom
pillow-less.
Tom knows Dead or Alive character
Just outing
names.
yourself as a Dead or
I
Alive.
just Googled it, all right?
You just Googled it?
I just Googled characters.
But, and a lot of the mini games kind of are that sort of thing. There's Tug of War, which is basically the same. You press buttons and one of you fall in the bloody pool. There's like each character has their favorite gifts and colors and stuff. So you, after a day of, butt battling, you just buy them a bunch of flowers or whatever, and they like you more, which means they perform better in volleyball. It's a volleyball game at its core. It's very, based around that. But yeah, so I was it kind of shocked me back then, because the reason why I would buy these fighting games is because after school I'd invite some lads around to play some Mortal Kombat or something weird, or BlazBlue, or maybe something weird in Japanese or whatever. And I was like, great, Dead or Alive is all right. This might be good. But I can't show him this. We can't have a butt battle first to 5 in the room, like me and a bunch of teenagers. It'd be a bit weird.
It's basically the loosest video game ever, in the sense that it's a bunch of mini games that are built to sustain the titillation of the player.
Yeah.
Basically.
And I think, this is probably due to me being kind of dumb back then and not looking at the box and realizing what I was getting into. But I genuinely thought I was going to get like a fighting game, and what I got, what I ended up getting was, a blackjack and roulette simulator.
I quite like that your pure innocence led you down the path of this smut, essentially.
Yeah, like I'm kind of shocked I was able to get it. I think I went down like a game station or whatever.
Did you get like smirked at by the person behind the till, or
just a little wink?
They must have. From what I can remember, I don't remember that, but I must have left, and they must have immediately started cracking jokes or something.
When I worked in a retail store, someone traded in an animated Japanese pornographic video on a PSP UMD, and because we took UMDs in, so it was a UMD copy of some hentai film and some tentacle porn thing, and it remained on the shelves of the store for ages. And you can imagine the joy that spread throughout the store on the day that someone bought it.
Was it Connor?
To the counter. It wasn't Connor.
It wasn't me. I promise it wasn't me.
Trust me, people in shops would have noted who was buying products of a certain stripe. People who bought copies of Galgun, for instance.
Yeah.
They would
But
noted.
I used to work in Maplin, and you definitely kept a note of the kind of people who were buying spy cameras back in the early 2000s, because they didn't have that many uses back then.
You got me nervous now, because I didn't go and like trade it back in, because I spent money on it, and it was like, I can play blackjack, it's all right.
Have you still got it?
I'd have to dig it out.
You're going to put a Donaldson and just like show us the perfect dark that got stolen.
I probably do have it somewhere. It is admittedly not at the top of my fighting game collection, mind you. It's
I love
buried at the bottom.
Play Magazine described it as the Manhattan Project for video game jiggle physics.
Who wrote
That's
that?
fantastic.
Was that
I don't
Dransfield?
know.
I was going to say it's Quick Dransfield, or maybe even Burns.
What I love about this, Connor, is how wholesome it is. Oddly, because the way the other two interpreted the topic was at a very sort of high level, discussion about the nature of genre and do we treat game genres like film genres, or are we talking about story? Are we talking about mechanical genres and talking about the relationships between those sorts of things? And your interpretation of the topic is and to your credit, is exactly how it's written. The best game that you thought was one genre, but turned out to be another. A very personal story about how you were a child and you thought you were getting a fighting game, and you actually had bought what is
porn.
Essentially softcore pornography.
Yeah.
I also like how it has apparently it has an incongruous casino bit, which puts it in a similar kind of media category as Last Jedi.
What do you use the money for?
Buying presents for your newfound friends, your borderline naked friends, yeah.
And
But honestly,
outfits.
and this is you have to trust me on this one. I honestly just kind of booted up, tried everything else, played a bit of butt battle, and then just accrued money at the casino until I got bored as a 13-year-old. But it seemed all right when I played it. It seemed a bit weird. I wasn't at that age. I was like, oh god, I'm not going to be caught dead playing this. Dad
This
had
was a
long
period
since,
as well.
Yeah, left the couch behind me.
But little do you know, but
weird.
your friends at the time would have killed for a copy of that. They wouldn't have been able to get one if they'd tried. You just lucked out by having the most lackadaisical game store employee who definitely shouldn't have sold that to you.
Well, if I came back with a copy of like a sick Mortal Kombat game, which I already kind of had because it was snuck to me by sneaky cousins, yeah. But they would have walked into my room at home and found me basically booting up, like you said, porn for the lads, which wouldn't have gone, maybe they would have been down with it, but I wasn't they would
have been jealous at not having their own copy. I'm not sure they would have been well up for enjoying it as part of a group activity. But yeah, I really love how different your interpretation of the topic is to everyone else. But it's the letter of the law. It is the topic to the letter, which it's as I wrote it, which is wonderful.
I will say, I did go into Brutal Legend because that was not a game I was reviewing. So I went into it expecting a fun action adventure romp with a load of people that I liked doing voices in it, and then I was shocked. For me, I was an RTS fan though, so I kind of relished in it, even though it was a bit crap.
Yeah,
you
like Pikmin as well, right? And Command and Conquer, and
Command and Conquer's top 5 game series of all time for me.
So from your perspective, that started out as an open world action adventure of the kind we were talking about in the last episode. These sort of wonderful open world games that all had these weird high concepts. Yeah. It started off as one of those. That's the kind of game that you like, and then it fanned out into another kind of game that you like.
It was really interesting and really exciting.
For me, that's where it lost me. All right, I've got to pick something. I'm going to play
just before you play that thing. I predicted this whole thing, right? So at the beginning of this podcast, I was like, this is bullshit, and only idiots would not know the genre of the game they were buying, right?
Okay.
Connor. Exactly what I said. Yeah, and I also said Brutal Legend would be the obvious pick.
Is your contention that Connor's an idiot or that 13-year-olds are idiots? Just to clarify.
13-year-old Connor.
That's fine. Yeah, that's totally just, yeah.
I think everyone's an idiot when they're 13, aren't they? I certainly was. All right. Okay. I'm going to play the Gotta Pick Something jingle. And now I've got to pick something. So I love... as I've said, I really love Connor's choice. But I think I would say that the game itself you weren't duped or anything. You were just 13 and buying what looked to you like a fighting game.
It didn't mention volleyball on the cover at all.
Did it not?
No, it's
isn't it? Hang on.
the second one is Dead or Alive Extreme 2. The first one is Dead or Alive Extreme Volleyball.
Dead or Alive Extreme 2. I need to see the cover of this game now.
All right,
It's got people in bikinis in it, but they can punch each other.
The cover of this game has a woman riding a jet ski,
Yeah.
2 women in bikinis, and then women playing beach volleyball. There's not a clenched fist in sight.
Well,
Yeah, they are. They're playing volley, like, you know, they're trying to, like...
Well, I think
You've disarmed me there. But I mean...
I desperately want to know what it said on the back. I want to know if 13-year-old Connor failed to
no
read
one
the back
reads
of the
the
box.
back.
Oh, well, here we go.
No
Here we go.
13-year-old reads the back.
Even
There is a quote
though
on
the
back of box
topic,
from IGN.
even though the topic doesn't necessarily mean that an element of deception was involved, I do think it does enhance someone's case if an element of deception was involved.
Well, this is the thing. I think, you'd have to go back and look, but I definitely feel like, because I was working in games news.
Yeah.
Brutal Legend wasn't a game that I was working on or around, but I definitely feel I was going to E3 then, and I feel like I was not aware that game had an RTS element until I
don't
literally
think
owned it.
I saw
was.
it a few times at preview.
I remember a
There was
lot of
never
people.
a sign of RTS.
Like, they actively hid it, and so it was
Yeah.
like, I think it was when reviews dropped, it was like,
I think a lot of people. I remember a lot of people on Twitter going mental, like, "What the fuck is this?"
Also, I do want to say, I found the Dead or Alive box now. There is a box quote from IGN on the backs. Dead or Alive Extreme 2 takes Finns to another level of sinful enjoyment.
Fighting games.
Bullshit.
Fighting
That's why
games.
you bullshit, isn't it,
That's your
Connor?
quote from the Imagine Games Network.
Fighting games, punching people.
I mean,
Simple.
that could be a box quote for Mortal Kombat.
It could be, yeah.
Could it not? All right.
Anyway.
Okay. Look, I love everyone's choice. Once again, God, they've been getting really difficult recently. Now that people have figured out how to game the show, I love everyone's choice, but I apologize to everyone who this isn't, but I'm going to give it to Tom.
Yes.
I'm really sorry. I'm sorry, Alex. I'm sorry, Connor. But I know that we were discussing about, like gameplay genres versus movie genres and stuff like that. But the sheer tonal shift in Bugsnax is incredible, and I think it does constitute something of a genre change, even if it's not mechanical. But what I love about it is that it's not a deception. It is actually there, hiding in plain sight in all the marketing. It's just everyone just didn't see it or chose not to see it. But if you go back and watch those original trailers, they are sinister. Those elements are seeded. They just don't draw much attention to them. You do see someone's arm turn into a curly fry, which is, I mean, that's straight up. That's horrific, isn't it? There's no way to dance around that. So yeah, I'm gonna give it to Bugsnax, and but I do think that as well, Brutal Legend. I do hope Brutal Legend comes up in another topic, because it deserves to be in our sort of weird Hall of Fame of best games, because it's definitely the best at something. It's one of the best Tim Schafer games for at least the first 12 hours.
The saddest thing was they were doing a sequel as well, and they found out that EA had cancelled the sequel, not from EA directly, but like from an EA press release.
It's just
fucking
that
awful.
is insane.
Hopefully
EA
now that
gets
they're
it
at
tight on this
Microsoft.
podcast, but they do deserve it, in fairness.
Well, hopefully now they're at Microsoft. Maybe that's. I assume EA owns that IP, but like, if Tim really wants to do it once he's done Psychonauts or whatever, Microsoft can go to EA and say, "How much do you want for the Brutal Legend IP?"
Microsoft can go to EA and go, "How much do you want for the entire company?"
They do it just for Brutal Legend 2.
I would say like Bugsnax. I love that it's in. We're gonna have to like make some kind of listing of all the games that are in our best games pantheon. Brutal Legend deserves a place in there. Dead or Alive Extreme Volleyball 2
Don't forget Galgun.
is much more dubious. Yeah, and it's in the Galgun category of like honorable mentions for almost getting the podcast cancelled entirely. All right, well, thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak to you later.
Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast.
if you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us get the word out. We're not just a podcast, of course. If you'd like to hear more from the team, then check out VG247.com for our fantastic news coverage, features, reviews, and game guides. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.